Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Kleiber Show. Today is Monday, November 9th, 2020. And the election is behind us. It feels like it's very far behind us. Some people will say that there still needs to be a lot of counting and certification. Yes, there does. But as far as many things are concerned, Joe Biden is the president-elect, and Kamala Harris is the vice president-elect, and they are already starting their transition as much as they can. I believe today they had a press conference talking about COVID-19 and putting together a COVID-19 advisory board to move forward. So I heard him give a speech talking about about wearing masks and how we all have to work together to resolve this conflict. And I feel hopeful. But I don't want to talk about politics too much today. I actually want to talk about someone who I never met, but who felt very near and dear to me, who passed away this weekend. For my non-American listeners, you may not know who this person is, but for most Americans, I bet you do. His name is Alex Trebek. So Alex Trebek was the host of Jeopardy, which was one of the most famous game shows in American history. It's been on most of my life. I don't actually know when he started hosting the show, but I believe it was in the 80s. And it's pretty much been on almost every single day of my life, Monday through Friday, on the same channel, And it's one of those things where it was just so nice to see a familiar face. And it hit me really hard yesterday. I didn't expect it to be to weigh on me so much. But Alex Trebek I think he was about 80 years old, and he was going through pancreatic cancer. And I think he announced last year that he was at stage 4 of pancreatic cancer. And he came back for another season, and he was recording the episodes, and he looked pretty good. I mean, I can't imagine what it must be like to go through that cancer and to go through that treatment and still be up on stage, reading out the clues and giving the answers and going back and forth so fast. It's going to be hard. I think there are very few figures in our lives who we see on such a consistent basis. And I don't know, as a kid growing up and still now, it was one of those shows that brought my family together. I know a lot of people may not like Jeopardy. A lot of the trivia and the questions, maybe they don't get a lot of them, or maybe it makes them feel stupid. In a way, it made me feel understood. Like somebody got me, like somebody else was super excited about all these different fields. And I was just thinking about it the other day, how when a word would come on, Alex Trebek would almost always pronounce it in the language of which it would come from. So if it were like a French word, he would put on a French accent, or if it was like a Spanish word, he'd put on a Spanish accent, or if it were a Russian clue, he would read it in a Russian accent. I guess I was just so impressed that he knew so many different accents, and he knew so much about the world. And whether he knew the answers or knew the questions to the answer, because Jeopardy had an opposite format, I don't know, to me it seemed like he embodied curiosity. And growing up, especially when there wasn't really a strong internet, dial-up modems and things like this, and I think it was harder for me to find people who had such zeal to learn about so many different things. I'm not saying people don't like to learn. I think we all like to learn, but I still think it's rare that I come across somebody who is so curious about so many different topics. And again, this is just me projecting on him, but it just felt like he was a mentor in a way. I sit and watching the show, and I watch with my family, and I try to guess. I'm watching with my parents recently, even, and I try to guess the answers as quickly as possible and try to beat them to it. And a lot of it's about guessing the answers, but I'd say even more of it for me was about learning and just, oh, I didn't realize it. Oh, that's what it's called. That's right. Oh, well, that's fascinating. I didn't know that. Oh, like so many moments where I learned something on the show or relearn. And, yeah. My dad never really liked the interview part, but I love the interviews. So if you're not familiar with the show, how the show goes is that they have 3 rounds. There's Jeopardy, and then there's Double Jeopardy, and then there's Final Jeopardy. So the first round is they have, I think it's 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 different categories. And then, see, it's funny, I don't even know the precision. Maybe 6 different categories and 5 different question levels or answer levels, really. And then the values double in Double Jeopardy, and then Final Jeopardy is just one question and where you're allowed to wager however much you have. And so halfway through the first round, they pause and they do interviews of the 3 contestants. And I loved it just to see Alex ask questions and maybe have like a quick little retort or a little reply or even just a facial expression or sound effect after he hears some of the quirky stories from these people. Yeah. I mean, I broke down yesterday. It's just, it felt like I'm sure many people felt when they lost Michael Jackson or lost Robin Williams, someone so close to them. That's the weird thing about celebrity. We may never have ever met the person, but they feel so close to us, such a part of our lives. I mean, I watched that show with my grandma. I'd watch Wheel of Fortune. She loved Wheel of Fortune. And then we would go and we watch Jeopardy afterwards. And I don't think she liked Jeopardy so much. But it was like a staple in my life. Just this consistent presence that can almost give me permission to be a nerd. Whew. I think for some of us who really like to learn things and get really nerdy about things, we can feel really alone at times and think that others are angry at us for being so nerdy or just don't understand what it's like to be so excited. We get so frustrated that other people aren't so excited like we are. And just almost have the permission to do that. And to watch this show. There are other shows, game shows on TV where people are, doing trivia and stuff. But Jeopardy's the ultimate trivia for so many of us in the U.S. It's like, it turned trivia and knowledge and, cultural knowledge, but also scientific knowledge and just knowledge about broad swath of information to be cool. It was cool. It still is cool. Trebek was like the epitome of nerd cool. I don't know. It's just so much pain this year. so much loss, so much confusion, so much anger and sadness and frustration. It just seems never ending. Take all that stuff that's happening underneath, the lack of human touch, the lack of human contact, the fear of strangers giving a virus, and just add on top of that somebody who basically gave you permission to be a nerd, to want to learn about the world geography, to want to learn about opera. I hated the opera categories. I still do. But, to fine art, to literature, to science, to physics, to chemistry, to math, to so many different fields. And I think he did it with such a grace. He seemed to be so kind and loving, and I think I just feel so much frustration and anger with myself for not trying harder to meet him. You know, for not having the courage to apply for the Jeopardy test, thinking I wasn't smart enough to go online and try to make it. I lived in the city where they filmed it for like a year and a half. I was within walking distance of the studio where they filmed it, but I never tried to get tickets to go watch a show. I used to go to the coffee shop just across the street once a week easily and work out of that coffee shop. And I didn't try to get tickets. Someone said on Twitter, maybe this is one of the hardest parts about growing up, is that the people that have been in our lives for so long start to pass away. You know, the advantages of growing up, we get to learn, we get to have more power and agency over the world, we get to, try new things, but the sad part's about losing the people we really care about. I don't know if you've watched Saturday Night Live before, but they used to do a running skit about Celebrity Jeopardy. So sometimes Alex Trebek would host Celebrity Jeopardy, which was they'd bring on 3 different guests, and the guests would all be celebrities, and it'd be a little more laid back. They'd be playing for charity. Questions would be a bit easier, and they'd just play. But then, Saturday Night Live made a skit about it, and, the satire and mocking it in some way. And that's some of the funniest stuff I've ever seen. It's made me laugh so much. You had Norm Macdonald was the one playing Alex Trebek, and I believe it was Daryl Hammond was the one playing Sean Connery. And wow. Sean Connery was on there always like mispronouncing the category names and getting them wrong, and always taking them in a more lewd or vulgar manner, and always saying like "suck it, Trebek," and such fond memories of growing up, not just from the show but also from the comedy around it, and even playing Jeopardy in school. Like, we'd do quiz for school for learning things, and they would do it in the format and style of Jeopardy. I don't know. This year was a rough year. We lost a lot of people, but 2 of them are Alex Trebek and Sean Connery. Both of them passed away this year. Just makes me think how much sadness so many of us are carrying. How many of you have cried during this pandemic? How many of you have just bawled? I know I have at different times. And sometimes it seems like I'm totally fine, and the news cycle shifts to something else. So yesterday, I learned about Trebek's death, and I was broken. But then it shifted to something else. Oh, there was a football game. 60 Minutes was on here. Oh, COVID is hitting. Boom, 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 shifting the attention all the time. I joined a call that was talking about creating countries online, and so just the speed at which things move these days, I think, can prevent us from slowing down and grieving the loss, and not even realizing we lost things, Oh, Alex Trebek is really gone. He just kind of felt like the Mr. Rogers for nerds. Like, just that warm, comfortable place to go when I just wanted to disconnect from what else was going on in the world and just learn and challenge and try to recall my memory, and Jeopardy will still be there, but I think so often Jeopardy will still be there, but I think so often it's not about the show, it's about the person. I have nothing against Trevor Noah, but I watched The Daily Show for Jon Stewart. I think back on classes that I've had in college or classes that I've had in school, and I liked the class, but really it's because of the professor. I had one physics class where I really liked the professor. He was really fun, and he had a stuffed monkey that he would put on he would drop it from a tower or whatnot, and then he would shoot a steel little arrow to show that the monkey and the arrow fall at the same speed to show gravity and how gravity works. Or my English teacher in high school who taught us about Hamlet, but he fashioned a fencing sword or whatever out of an old car antenna and would whap it on the desk to get our attention. Or how he had us, he had every year paint their hands and put them up on the drop ceiling tiles or put them up on the wall throughout his classroom. So if you go into the classroom, you would see basically painted hands from all of the students in the past maybe 10 or 20 years. It's those little things, the people, the attachments we have to who's doing the thing. And I am going to miss Alex Trebek. And my dad was talking the other day. He said, Alex Trebek was from Canada, and on Jeopardy, they would occasionally throw in a Canadian clue, and oftentimes it would be about Canadian geography. And so often it's mostly Americans on the show. I think maybe some people who are living in the U.S. and aren't Americans. I don't actually know if you're allowed to participate unless you're an American citizen. Probably, but I'm not sure. I don't know from contest rules. You might have to be an American resident. But regardless, whenever, almost every time there was a question about Canada, I'd say most contestants got it wrong. Either got it wrong or didn't even ring in to answer the question. And Trebek seems so disappointed and offended each time. Come on, come on. We're the neighbors. You don't know where Quebec is? You don't understand Quebec? You don't know about the Yukon territories? Oh, come on. You don't know about the Canadian Rocky Mountains? Oh, please, please, please know a little bit about Canada. Like, please. I could just see that in his face, and my dad mentioned it, and it's just like, yeah, he seems to get so frustrated. Come on, you don't know about my country. Why don't you know about my country? It's so close. And I think that maybe hits harder for me and my family, just because we live in Michigan and we're about 20 minutes away from Canada. So it's just on the other side of the river or the lake. And even we don't know that much about Canada sometimes, about who was the former prime minister, who's the current prime minister we know, but like political parties and other things like this, Canadian history. So it's just those little things. And, it's hard for me to recall many of them right now. And I think sometimes we don't recall these things when someone passes away until, we're not going to recall them immediately. We recall them when they happen in life. So, if we're watching an old episode, it triggers something, or we're having a conversation with a friend. It's like, oh yeah, I remember when Trebek did this, or when there's a new host on the game show, and you're like, oh man, how Trebek used to do this? I really miss that. Death and grief can be a strange thing at times, especially grief. I think we often assume it's supposed to happen immediately, and immediately we've lost the person, and everything is going to flood before our eyes, and we're just going to remember all the stuff, and then we process it, and boom, we're gone. We're done. And move on and go forward with life. I don't think loss works that way. I don't think we actually lose. So we may lose the person, the physical embodiment of the person, but I don't think we lose the memories. We lose the stories. We lose the images or the sounds or the feelings of that person. And they come up in different situations, Hearing the music. They would play the Jeopardy music at sporting events. So growing up in Michigan, especially, I don't know if it's because of Michigan, but like we have a lot of hockey games, and going to the Red Wings hockey games, sometimes there would be confusion of what's the call or what's going to happen. And nowadays with instant replay, I think that's happening even more. And so they might throw on the Jeopardy music that they normally play during Final Jeopardy when the contestants are trying to figure out the final answer. And so, I could be sitting there watching a hockey game and that song comes on. It can remind me of Alex Trebek. Or I could be in a classroom and someone decides to play a game of Jeopardy. Or I could be doing, almost anything, because Jeopardy spans so many categories. It could be a question, I could be interacting with some type of opera that I've heard about so many times on Jeopardy, but never knew, something like The Barber of Seville. I don't really know too much about it, but, maybe it's playing, and then I think about how I learned about this on Jeopardy, and then boom, now I'm tied back to Alex Trebek and the loss. Yeah, it's just this maybe idea that we're supposed to get over people and get over the loss. And this idea that we actually lose and become disconnected from these people. I don't think we do. I think they stay part of us for the rest of our lives. At least for as long as we can remember. But even when we can't remember, I wonder if our body still remembers when we're not able to consciously remember things. It's they've done some research and some experimentation with people who have Alzheimer's or dementia. And talking with them, sometimes they don't remember things, and the conversations, they can get lost. But sometimes playing a song can bring them right back into that memory. Sometimes they just start crying, or they just start singing along as well. So a lot of times, even if we don't remember things, it's still there. They're still part of us. The stories, the experiences, the way we interacted with each other. In a way, it almost makes it feel less scary to lose somebody, because we don't really lose them. They're still here with us somehow, some way, you know? And maybe that's, even more so nowadays where we have digital recordings of so much. Go back and watch maybe all 30 seasons of Jeopardy, 35 or whatever it is. And watch Trebek when he's a young kid, moving all the way up to Trebek now when he's 80. Maybe he came on, I think, when he was like in his 40s or something. Not a young kid per se, but... And I'm talking about Alex Trebek here, but I think this applies to loss and grief in any way, that when we break up with someone, when someone moves away, or when someone dies, they're still with us. We don't ever really disconnect from people. They're still part of us. They're still in our thoughts, in our mind, in our hearts, in our bodies, in the architecture around us, in the, they still leave imprint on this world. So I don't know. I think a lot of us feel the pain, but don't necessarily get it out. I imagine there are many other fellow nerds out there, or self-identifying nerds, who may have been heartbroken yesterday. I hear you. And I think I'll always be sad when I think about the loss of Alex Trebek. And what I'm trying to remind myself is that it's okay to feel sad. I think so many of us say, it's not okay to feel sad. It's not okay to cry. That means I'm weak. It means I'm... No, I think feeling sad means that I lost something I really cared about. Lost someone I really loved. That's okay. It means that I have a lot of love. I feel love towards people and things. So if at any point you feel sad and you're starting to beat yourself up for feeling sad, or other people are telling you you're not supposed to feel sad, I just want you to remember it's okay to feel sad. One thing that it tells you is that you really cared about the thing that you lost. And in a way, I feel happy. Kind of, there's a certain joy in realizing that I care about the world and care about others. If I lose something I don't care about, I don't even notice. If I lose something I really care about, I can get angry and sad and hopeless and down. It's okay. If I worry, often worry is the fear that I'm going to lose someone or something that I care about. It means that I care. All these emotions can just remind us how much we care about the world, even if we don't think we do. So, I wanted to say more. I didn't know what to say, and sometimes that's okay. It's not a one-time thing. This is an ongoing process, and we lose people and we still hold on to them. So they're gone and they're not. It's this paradox, this non-dual nature of life. What do you call it? Superposition. To go all super nerdy and physics on you. It's quantum physics. as much as I believe in the case for moral superposition, I also believe in this idea of kind of maybe mortal superposition, that we're here and we're not here at the same time. And if we think about it too hard, then we say either the person is alive or the person is not. But I don't know. I think he's gone and he's still here with us. On that note, I just want to end and say goodbye, Alex Trebek.